Morning. Welcome to Learning Revolution. I want to thank each of you for taking time out on a Thursday morning, or it may be, evening if you're across the world. We have one joining us from Australia. So it's midnight there. So I'm really grateful that you took the opportunity to want to explore this topic and to connect with one another. I think this is such a fantastic service that Steve is offering the world, especially in this time of need. And so I am grateful that you're here this morning, and I do hope that you stay connected with each other. I have shared a copy of the presentation in the chat, so please feel free to take that. You'll also be getting a folder, a Google folder link that will have additional articles that you're more than welcome to share with others as you're moving, as we're moving forward. If you're just now joining us, you probably have your mic muted, but the topic this morning is building community presence. We're thinking about cognitive presence and teaching presence and how that it can be utilized and scaffold to build a strong social presence and improve online learning so that we have a quality learning space online. This session is being recorded. Please feel free to connect with me if you have any questions afterwards. Also, if you're just now joining, I'm going to encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat. And this will be an interactive presentation. So at any moment, if you feel like contributing to the conversation, please feel free to unmute your mic or to enter your question or comment into the chat. Also want to remind you that we are using the hashtag Learning Revolution. It's a great way for you to grow your professional learning network in social media, whether that's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. So, let's follow the conference and support each other moving forward. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started because it's exactly 9 a.m. and I do want to honor your time this morning. And I did start the recording, so that's great that we have access to this moving forward. And I was thinking with all of the issues happening around the world, it's wonderful to have this recording so that you can share it with teachers or educators in your organization or campus. But I do want to start with a question today. How do we connect? And so I am going to be using several tools today and introducing you to many technologies. This first one is something called Mentimeter. It's a great formative assessment tool. And I wanted to interact with you today and just have you either use your phone, you can scan this QR code, or go to the link. And I'm going to leave this up for just a few more seconds. Don't worry, I'm going to go to another slide here so you can see. But I want to ask this question here. I want us to think about, how do we connect? Okay, so let me go back. Not as fast as I used to be. And this was logged in. Of course, now it's not. So hold on, let me stop this share here. I'm going to do a new share. And so I want you to think about, how do we connect? And I'll go back here to this screen. And this Mentimeter tool is just a great way for you to kind of interact with your audience online. And it's a great formative assessment tool. There are many different versions that you can use. I'm using just the free version, but there is a professional version that gives you a lot more information. But if you didn't get that code, you can also go to menti.com, and this first question is, we're going to use the code 77490. So as we're thinking about how do we connect, how important is it for educators to stay connected with students online? So if you're there, I'm wondering what your thoughts are here. How important is it for educators to stay connected with students online? You know, we're moving all this content, all of our classrooms online. How important is it for the teacher to be online? And most of us think it's very important. So we have 5 people today who have responded. So we all agree that it's important to do. Some think that it's somewhat important. Okay. I just want to use this to see kind of where you are in this new learning revolution, online learning revolution. Okay. The next question, I can get to it. I'll close the voting there. All right, so most of us think it is somewhat important, but how often do we connect with students online? If you are teaching online, are you connecting with them daily? Those who are. 2 to 3 times a week, 1 time a week, every other week, once a month, or is this completely new to you? I think for most of us, this is a completely new experience, it seems. So I have 10 people that have voted. And that's good to see. We see so many of us, this is a new experience, and we're connecting, if we do connect, once a week. Why is it important to connect with students online? Why is it important to connect with students online? Okay, this particular tool, what I like about Mentimeter is it has many different formative assessment questions that you can ask. And if you have a classroom, you can actually track students' results over time. In this one, you are going to, it's an open-ended question, and you can enter up to 3 words. And it builds a word cloud, which means the more frequent the answer, the bigger the word. So I just kind of want to see why it might be important for us to connect with students online.
Yeah.
All right, and so I see the word community there. It's so important, and engagement, yes. Relationships, you know, relationships are always what matters, and both face-to-face and online. It's all about the relationship with the learner. Motivation, support, concern. Some great responses in this word cloud here. Feedback, consistency. Yeah, it's important for us to show that we are concerned and to model online learning appropriately as a teacher. All right. So thank you for participating. That is a Mentimeter tool. And I find that it's helpful to use with students at the beginning of a lesson. And it's something that you can use outside of Zoom or Canvas or Blackboard. So I want to kind of get to know each other because I think, you know, you all have a wealth of experience to bring to our conversations today. I'll start. This is just a little bit about me. My name is Dr. Miller Ray. I am a 22-year public school veteran here in the United States. I have dedicated my life to education technology, professional learning, and I'm a lifelong student, lifelong learner. I have taught in a variety of schools, from rural areas to urban areas, high income. But primarily I enjoy low income. We're helping low income students. Currently, I work at Sullivan State University, which is on the Texas-Mexico border. It's a very remote location next to Big Bend National Park, which is a big park that is in the Chihuahuan Desert. So I serve students that are in very remote areas and teach graduate studies here at Sul-Ross. I am a cognitive scientist. My PhD is in cognitive science and learning technologies, and I study makerspace environments and STEM literacies. So I coordinate the reading program here and the education technology program. And so we're in a remote area, and we often, our students don't have internet connectivity sometimes. Sometimes they often lack devices. So we're in a very remote area, and this has presented some unique challenges to many school districts in this area. Okay, that's enough about me. There's the university. It's a pretty university. It's small. Very low income. It serves a lot of low income students, and we are a Hispanic serving institution. Okay, so that's a lot about me. If you haven't already, please enter your name in the chat box and let's welcome each other. If you would like to share where you are and unmute your mic, you're welcome to do that now. But I do want us to kind of introduce ourselves, whether it's via chat or you can mute your mic. We have people from Chicago, Oregon. This is awesome. A fellow Texan, New York, Australia, DC, Long Island, New Jersey. Wonderful. Okay, it looks like we have a librarian. Yay, I love librarians. Lots of librarians here with us this morning. Blended learning administrators, faculty. So we have a wide variety. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so what are we going to do this morning in this short time we are together? Today we are going to think about connectivism, and I like the question I saw in the chat. It depends on what connectivism means to you, and that's so true. I want us to think though why it's important to connect, and let's think about the cognitive science behind how to leverage online learning to increase student engagement, learning motivation, why that's important to the cognitive processing. And we can do this through building a strong community and thinking about our community presence, social presence, and teacher presence. And we're going to think about how we can incorporate the 4 C's. And if that's new to you, we'll talk about that here in a second. to facilitate a strong cognitive presence. We're also going to discover, share, and participate in learning activities as a group designed to facilitate conversation on how to overcome barriers in an online learning environment. You're going to use a lot of variety, a lot of tools today to facilitate our collaboration. And we're going to think about discourse and how that can be used to help with our pushing our cognitive presence and also creative tasks. So I want to start with the why. I think as educators, we're often, why are we doing this? And, why is this important? So I want to start with this idea of connectivism. So many of you may have heard of connectivism, or this may be a new idea to you. But does anybody know what connectivism is? Has anybody heard of connectivism in our group today? If you have, you can unmute your mic or you can chime in. Anyone? Okay, well, connectivism is a learning theory. It's this idea that explains how technology in today's world has created new opportunities for people to learn and share information across the world like we're doing today. I believe knowledge is a social process, all right? And this is not just my ideas. This goes all the way back to Vygotsky and social constructivism. Learning is a social process, and that doesn't look different if we just push it online. However, when we have new online technologies, it's important to remember that learning is a social process. So with the web and with our social media and the ability for us to connect and using email, old-fashioned email, or wikis, or online discussion tools, or YouTube, social learning networks like Twitter or Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram, YouTube, or any other tool that we have out there. It's important for you to, as an educator, to learn how to share information to build a social interaction with your students. And that's also something that we facilitate as teachers because learning is a social process. And so when we're thinking about pushing information online, it's important for us to think about the different types of tools that we use to build this social process. So we have a question that just popped up. So the essential question then is, how do we keep and not lose the social piece? That's a great question. And if you have the answer to that, let's think about that today. I propose that it's important to think about the cognitive presence, the social presence, and the teacher presence. And the teacher is key to this. We've all participated in online courses where the instructor just copy and pasted the course and there was no interaction. Well, the learning wasn't powerful in that course because I maintain that there was no social process. So as an educator or as a leader, an administrator, we have to think about what social tools do we have available to us so that we can, as best as we can, provide the opportunity to facilitate social interaction to build relationships, because it is key. It is all about the relationships that we have with our students. And there is often a disconnect there. There's a learning curve to do this. So this idea of connectivism is a learning theory. It explains how we use the internet, these new technologies, to build a network of ideas so that learning can occur. And this is not a new theory. It has been around for over 20 years. But Simons, who is one of the founder of connectivism, he stresses that knowledge does not only reside in the mind of an individual, but knowledge resides when we share with one another, right? It's exchanged through a network. And so it's a pattern. It's as a teacher, recognizing these patterns and shaping this through a complex network. So when we think about online learning, especially in 2020, I'm not going to use the term 21st century learning anymore. I think it's already been 20 years. Okay, we should be future ready. So in 2020, as future ready educators, we should be teaching in a connected environment because it's a literacy. It is a literacy that has to be taught and modeled. It's not something that kids just are born with knowing how to do. So it's important that we think of it as a literacy, and we also learn how to leverage the content that we're supposed to teach with the internet network apps and programs to facilitate conversations so that new ideas are formed through this social presence. So, how did you connect today to this learning environment? So I am going to attempt right now to add a question in Zoom. Zoom has some capabilities. We're going to start though with the chat for this question here because it's not going to let me do open-ended. But in the chat, how did you, connect to this learning environment? How did you connect today? How did you learn about this event today? Oh, an email. So we have email. Most of you from email. A link through Zoom. Library 2.0. You're a member of Learning Revolution, Internet Research, Facebook, a university bulletin board. Okay, so I want Twitter, email. I want you to look at these answers here. I first connected to Steve on Twitter as well, and also received an email and social media. But I think it's important for us to look at this because sometimes we assume that it's the latest and greatest technology is how we connect. I remember as I was earning my PhD, we did a short study at the University of North Texas, which is in North Texas, it's in Denton. And we did an online learning study asking graduate students, how often do they hear from their professor and what's their favorite mode of communication? And we were thinking, oh, it's going to be video, you know, and back then we were using Adobe Connect for our video conferencing. Guess what we found from our research? We found that the #1 preferred communication was email. And as we dug deeper and we followed up with interview questions from the focus group afterwards, a qualitative study, we found that the students weren't getting any communication at all, and they were just happy to hear from their teacher. And so if it was just email, then at least that was something. So I think it's important for us to think about, you know, not all teachers are going to be able to just, you know, jump on YouTube, you know, that might be a learning curve, but it's really not. Yes, the mode can make an impact, but really it's just this idea of keeping the conversation going. So I find it interesting that most of you learned about this through email. But let's think about what's happened in the last month, okay? For the last 22 years of my life, I have been, teaching computer science or, helping teachers adapt to technology or, teaching in different ways, librarians, helping with assessment, online assessment. There's a lot of things that I've done with, but the common thread has been technology. And so here we've been talking about this for 22 years, my entire career. And in the last month, we finally see this big shift to online learning. But what's happened is it's been maybe not all quality, right? Does anybody want to share anything they've heard maybe from our experiences you've had as a parent or as a teacher, just trying to move to this online environment, or maybe just your organization, how hard it's been to shift and push things online? Would you say that it's been quality learning for your organization with the online push? Just my own experience as a parent, my son loves to create video games. He is a coder. He cannot stand his online Google Classroom, some of them right now, because he doesn't hear from his teacher. It doesn't know what to do. So I think often, sometimes it's worksheets, that are just put online. So we have to really think about how we're building this community presence. Now, it's been a big transition quickly, and I don't know if it was well thought out for all organizations. And so that's why I think this topic is important. Because when we are going to push out our content online, we have to remember first that community and relationships still matter, okay? And that must be our focus as a leader or as a teacher. But that for quality learning to occur, we have to have first a strong cognitive presence. So what does that mean? Well, that is how students interact with content. Okay, how are they going to interact with your curriculum content? You have to select the content and you have to get it pushed out online, and it still has to be scaffolded appropriately. And you have to think about it from the learner perspective. Is it easy? Does it flow easy? So by scaffold correctly, what are some considerations that we should think about when we're thinking about cognitive presence? How do we scaffold learning online in an online learning format? So we have a learning management system, and many of us, our organizations, select that for us. Some are using Google Classroom. Here at the university, we use Blackboard. Some learning networks that I'm a part of, we use Canvas. You might use Schoology. There's a learning management platform usually. And it's important for us to remember that to build a connectivist approach, you really want that platform to be well thoughtfully laid out. And one piece is modules. So you want to scaffold the learning in quick modules. And that's an important consideration to think about. And yes, it is a leadership planning piece. And this is new for a lot of people. And we could have a whole session just on this, okay? There's a lot here. I'm just kind of giving a general overview, okay? And then afterwards, if you want to talk to me about something, a little piece, I'll be happy to talk to you more about this. But really, you have to think about, how are we going to have students interact with each other? How are we going to have relationships in this online platform? How is the information going to be scaffolded or chunked in modules? And in those modules, how are we going to support conversation so that we can have discourse? And what is discourse? Discourse is sharing different perspectives, right? And using higher level thinking and questioning. Okay, a question I see here with cognitive presence is, how long should videos and presentations be? Well, today we're having an interactive presentation, and it's an hour, okay? But if you're going to have a video they say they need to be short. So we're looking at 1.5 to 3 minutes. But if you're going to have a that's not synchronous, so we'll talk about asynchronous and synchronous here in a second, but you want to chunk information. And there are tools that will do that for you. One of my favorite tools that I like to use is there's a video tool called not Edmodo. Hold on, we'll come back to it in a second. But there's a lot of video tools out there where you can pause the video and ask a question, right? And maybe a multiple choice question or open-ended question to make sure that students are watching the video. But you never want to have a long, lengthy video. And if you're going to have a synchronous class, like we're having today, you want it to be fairly short. You don't want it to be, I say no more than 1.5 hours. You just got to think about how much time people really have. You have to be flexible as a teacher, and we'll talk about flexibility here in a second. So what cognitive presence, though, is how we interact with the content. You got to select the content. You've got to think about the interaction piece with that. You have to scaffold it and support the discourse. The second piece is something that I am very passionate about, that is teaching presence. Okay, this is critical. You can put the content out there, but it also requires a human. I believe that, we can't, AI this out. This has to be a human interaction piece because, relationships matter. So it's the teacher then is going to help select the content, and then we're thinking here, how is the teacher going to interact with the students? How are they going to interact with the content? Okay, what is the frequency of this interaction? And you as the teacher set the tone, not only for your face-to-face class, but also for your online class. So that kindness piece, that empathy piece, that flexibility piece, that is you, and you have to be an encourager. You are a facilitator of learning. So also then you're facilitating through your leadership a social presence, right? So that we have peer-to-peer interaction. This is how we interact with our peers in this online platform. How are we supporting discourse? So it's important to remember these 3 pieces. And these 3 pieces look different for different age groups, okay? So we also have to think about, there's just not one approach that fits all learners. This looks different in an early literacy classroom from a high school senior classroom. So we don't want a learning management system for all. It definitely, we need to think about the stage of development and what that looks like. Going back to the science, okay, we think about, the learning theory of connectivism. It is rooted in social constructivism. And so this whole idea of the zone of proximal development, which you're probably familiar with, we want to think about scaffolding, right? And making sure that the content is appropriate, but you can't just roll it out all at once. Let me give you a good example. Blogging. I'm a very big, I teach literacy, so a big piece of that is writing and reflecting. And so I wanted my students to blog, and you can always learn from my failures. I have many of them. Here's one of my failures from a while back. I just thought, everyone was like me and they could just, pick up a computer and create a blog in a week. That was a huge failure. Okay, that needed to be scaffolded, right? So step 1, let's go critique a blog. What is a blog, right? Now this assignment takes 4 different modules. Okay, week 1, we're just looking at what a blog is. Okay, or module 1, module 2. Now we're going to go critique and we're going to do peer reviews. Okay, module 3. We're now going to go create one, and we're going to think of and have some type of activity where we post. And then 4, we're sharing that out with our peers in the world and doing peer reviews. So you can't just throw something out there. It has to be scaffolded. So, when you're introducing a new idea like online learning, some of you are new to this today. It's what you said in the formative assessment when we began today. You said to me, this is new to me, okay? So right now you're at this place where this is beyond your current ability, okay? So knowing that, I as a teacher have to be flexible and change my instruction just like I would face-to-face so that I can help you, right? So you get this, like, you have a little bit more confidence. And that self-efficacy piece is what we need to do as digital learning coaches or instructional coaches or principals, or, you know, maybe you deliver professional development. You're wanting to build confidence. And so you do this through cognitive presence, through that scaffolding and those modules. Okay. Also, with cognitive presence, you must have a learning model, okay? So I've told you the why. Let's talk about the how. How do you build this cognitive presence? You do this through a learning module. Yes, I agree, Janet. You do have to have ground rules. You definitely have to have classroom rules. I'm glad you brought that up. We can't just assume people understand the etiquette of online learning, just like you would in a face-to-face class. You should have expectations. Good point. You definitely, though, also need to think about the content. How are you going to roll it out? And I always encourage people to have a learning model. Okay. Now we're talking about connectivism today, and connectivism is the theory that we learned. There's a social process of learning online using these technologies. So I'm going to share with you 2 learning models that I have used for connectivism. The first one is the 5E model. How many of you have heard of the 5E model? This is something we use a lot in STEM. So if you teach science or math, you may have used the 5E model. If you need more information about that, I'll be happy to send it to you. But it's this idea that we first engage the students in the module. Then we have an activity where students explore in the module. Then they explain, or we may explain as a teacher in the module, so a direct teach. Then we have the student elaborate in the module. And then finally, we have an evaluation piece in the module. So when we're scaffolding the modules, we're using the 5E model to make sure that the learning's occurring for this set of learning objectives. Another learning model that I've used for connectivism is the ARCS. It's simple. It's called the ARCS learning model. And it's where in the model you have an attention to a topic, the learning objective. You give attention. You show relevance to the real world. You build confidence or self-efficacy through some type of creation and collaboration task. And then through that, the students have satisfaction. They engage. Whatever you decide to do, teachers do need to be aware of these models, because otherwise you're just throwing stuff up there on a learning management system and you're not thinking about the cognitive piece. And I think this is probably missing in most of our classes online right now. So good cognitive presence. If you're thinking about connectivism, you do need to have a triggering event. You need to have an exploration category, so have a piece where learners explore. You need to have an integration category where we integrate ideas and have time for students to synthesize. And then finally, and the last part for cognitive presence for connectivism, you provide an opportunity for students to apply, test, and defend. Mainly, I want us to remember that human teachers matter. Kids like to see each other. Adults do. I enjoy seeing your faces right now. We get a lot of motivation as a learner when we connect with our teacher. It helps with our confidence. But yeah, a learning module, let me go back to, a learning module is a curriculum unit, okay? And let me just make a clarification, but every learning module, Helen, is based on a theory, okay? So you start with a theory of why are we learning this? So how is the brain gonna learn this? And then you build a learning model. You have to have both, and they're not the same thing. So in this example, we have connectivism. That is our learning theory. But we're going to use the model, the 5E model, or maybe the ARCS model, to check that it's happening, right? That's how it will happen. That's to make sure that it happens. So you have to have both. But yes, human teachers do matter. So let's go to part 2. Teachers have to be facilitators. So you are a facilitator. This means you're facilitating managerial tasks in the course. That can be calendars, grading, the syllabus, etc. We also have a pedagogy piece that we are facilitating, so our course content, the social part, and then managing all these technical issues. So it's a lot that we have to problem solve as a facilitator. But how does a teacher facilitate social interaction online? So I want to ask you, how do you facilitate social interaction online? What are some things that you have tried? Zooms, yeah, we're in a Zoom room right now. Discussion boards, yes. Tools like Padlet, yeah. YouTube, whiteboards. There's so much out there, isn't there, to facilitate social interaction. Flipgrid, great one. So one idea as we're moving along to help you with this is we want to think about the 4 C's. So when you as a teacher are facilitating content, you want to think about the actions that your course can facilitate so that students have the ability to communicate. So what tools are we going to use for communication? What tools will we use for collaboration? What tools can we use for critical thinking? And then finally, what tools can we use for creativity? And so one way to help you facilitate an engaging class is to think about what we call the 4 C's. These are actions, so we're not selecting a technology just to use the technology. We're selecting the technology for one of these 4 actions in our course. And it's going to help with our cognitive presence and our social presence. Okay, so I want to start with communication because I think that's what's critical first. We have asynchronous communication, which means we're not in real time. The advantage of asynchronous communication is it offers a lot of flexibility. So if I'm going to use a discussion board, that would be asynchronous, or maybe a YouTube video, that would be asynchronous. But the conversation with peers still matter for asynchronous conversation. So you as a teacher would need to think of higher level questioning and to help facilitate questioning in this communication. And you need to model that as a teacher. Remember, you're facilitating this. So they need to see you do it to catch on. What do I mean by that? So let's say you have a discussion board. Have you ever been in a discussion board piece where the student might say, "Good job," or "I like that"? That's not a very deep peer response. So you as the teacher have to facilitate how we have online discussions that are more thoughtful, using questioning, and there are a lot of strategies to help you do that. Then we have synchronous communication. This is in real time. There's immediate feedback. The response we're having today is engaging, but it's not as flexible, meaning that we all have to meet at a certain time, right? And so it's not as flexible. So we've thought about this question, but you know, as you move forward, for time's sake, I'm going to keep going. You want to think about how are we fostering communication in our learning environment. And there are lots of apps, and I don't have time to go over all the different tools. But even if it's just email, communication is really important. Okay, so there are asynchronous tools and not so synchronous. So you can choose your mode. Then you want to think about collaboration. How do you foster collaboration in your learning environment? And then how do you foster creativity in your learning environment? So I have a lot of apps here that I don't have time to go over today, but there is so much out there. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, I have a resource that I can share with you with tons of apps. But mainly it's just thinking about the actions, and I'm going to encourage you to reach out to someone in our learning community today or on Twitter or in your organization to think about, okay, can you share with me a communication app? Or how are you facilitating creativity online? How are we facilitating critical thinking online? Okay. So today I didn't have time to use many of these, but I was going to have you do a Padlet, and we're just not going to have time today. But there's so many different ways to facilitate assessment online and critical thinking. So as we are closing today, we have about a few minutes left. I'd like to know, what is one way you could better address integrating the 4 C's in your classroom for those who are educators? I'm looking here at the chats. Or what are you doing to facilitate the 4 C's? Do you think about that? Yeah, the collaboration is hard. Thank you for sharing that, especially today. So I would suggest, because of the environment we're in right now, you're going to want to choose asynchronous tools right now because you need to be flexible as a teacher in this crisis. So what are some collaboration tools you could use? Discussion is a good one to use. Padlet is another great one to use. Depends on the age, right? So I can't really just answer that without knowing your specific situation. Some questions I have are, what role does social emotional learning have to play with online? Well, the relationships matter. So yes, you have to show you care. You have to facilitate a caring environment. And so videos and also literature that you select can help with that as well, right? Just like you wouldn't at face-to-face. You're just using different tools. And you do have to work with your district, and there are always barriers, but that personal connection is important. And yes, your librarian is your friend, and they are there. They have so many resources for the 4 C's that they can help you with, and a lot of times they'll create things for you. I've found that they find articles for me. I think modeling, also you can, connect with parents and coaching. I mean, are you talking about right now? How do we facilitate SEL skills now? I think we do have to think about all the stakeholders we have access to and how they can help as well. All right, I am going to put this in the chat, but there is a folder that I'm going to open up here so you can see it. It has articles in this folder about the 4 C's that you can share. Connectivism, an example of a project I did a while back on this, using the ARCS model, because I think that might be new for some of you, and VoiceThread. And then also, I am sharing with you one of my former professors. I love this. It's an online learning rights student rights. I think it's important for us to think about students first. And, you know, they do have a right to have a strong relationship online. And it talks about the cognitive, social, and teacher presence. And so I'm sharing that with you. These aren't just my ideas. This is grounded in research. And I do think that that's important for you to know. So I am going to share that link so that you can share with others. And then I'm just going to encourage you to stay connected with me. I'm always happy to learn from others and to connect online globally for projects. I love to learn with you. So I'll be happy to support you moving forward. So as we are ending, I'm going to put that link to the folder in the chat. And then if you have any questions or you want some clarification, you can definitely unmute your mic and I'll be happy to answer that. Are there any questions about any of the content that we've covered this morning? Go back in the chat and look, make sure I didn't miss anything. I love Book Creator. It's a great tool. Yeah, I think often we can use this organization's Facebook page, but like, you know, for parents, but, you know, I think about my 2 teenage sons, they're not on Facebook. So you have to think about where are your learners, you know, and, you know, they're on Instagram. So who are they? What social media platforms do they use? I would love to look at your webinar. I'm going to copy that. Thank you for sharing. Put that there, down here. Yeah, Rhonda, my son thinks Facebook's for old people too. And, you know, as a college professor, freshmen, they're not using Facebook. We need to remember that. You know, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds are not on Facebook. Now, my graduate students, they are. So I think that's important to remember. Yeah, it is a learning revolution. It's an online learning revolution, not a blended, an online. I want to state that, you know, this has been around for a while, but now it's going to be the future. I'm afraid. It's not the tech tools. You're right. It's about the learning. We forget that. Okay, well, I hope you have a blessed day, and I'm going to try to catch some more of these today. And it's great that we have this for the next few months, right? It's a great opportunity. And I heard today you can also host if you are a leader. I found out this morning from Steve that Learning Revolution will host your virtual conference. Isn't that wonderful to know? So I'm going to be checking that out from our university here. It's already set. Thank you so much. I did. I put the link up there. There's a Google folder link that I shared. Oh, wait, I didn't share it to everyone. Sorry about that. I shared it. Here it is. Thank you. You guys have a great day. I'll stop the recording.